Hi everyone, welcome to this tutorial where we are going to create this exact animation. This is a complete beginner's tutorial as I'll take you through step by step with clear explanations to whatever we are going to do. Before we begin with this tutorial, I'd like to point out a few things to consider as a 3D artist when creating a product animation like this or product animation in general. The first thing to consider is concepts. This means that you need to have an understanding of whatever you are going to be creating. You need to understand the initial idea behind the type of animation you want to make, together with the purpose it's meant to serve. So for our animation, we are animating a PS5 game controller ad. So we need to make it look like an animation meant for video game fans. We can't create a game controller animation ad which looks like something meant for a totally different people or product. So after getting the concept, you need to plan the mood and feel of your animation. Is it going to be a lively animation or just something that looks simple? And all these are controlled by the soundtrack and the speed of the animation. So if you want to add a musical sound to your animation, it's very important to choose something that will help you convey the mood or story and timing of the animation. The next thing to consider is a storyboard. A storyboard is simply a visual representation of the different shots or scenes of an animation. It's usually a series of sketches and images that show the progression of a story. And this is something that is really important to me because it saves me time and also having to think of a new shot after another without a clear idea of how it's going to look. And next, we need to consider good lighting. This is really self-explanatory, but just to elaborate on it, good lighting is very crucial to showcase your product in an appealing and realistic way. With the perfect light and scene setup, your animation appearance is really enhanced and helps to tell its story effectively. So with all that being said, let's begin. For the files to follow along with, there are two PS5 game controllers which will be provided. The one on the left is for free but comes with less details. This is still really perfect to use as it's also going to give excellent results in our animation. The one on the right is what I'll be using for this tutorial and it is a highly and more realistic looking model when compared to this other one. You can get it on my Patreon for just $10. Every other file I'll be using, including the audio, videos, and HDRI, is provided for free. Link to all the files is in the description. And talking about HDRI, to load what we are going to be using for our animation into Blender, simply come to the World Properties tab here and click on this little yellow dot, search for Environment Texture, and find your HDRI in whatever folder you have it in. Double click on it to load it into Blender. So the first thing I'm going to do is to load in my soundtrack. So let's come over here and choose video sequencer. Select add sound and choose your soundtrack from wherever you saved it to. And you can see our audio file is way too longer than the end frame of our timeline because the end frame is 250 frames long, but our audio file is 699 frames. Let's just say 700 frames long, but that shouldn't be an issue. Let's not worry about that. Come over here again and let's take this back to the 3D viewport. Come to this tab here and choose animation. You can see that this part of our screen is divided into three separate windows. The first one here is where I like to turn to my camera view so I can see how my animation is playing out. And here is the normal 3D viewports where almost all the work happens. And beneath here is the graph editor. And this is where we control the interpolation, the look, and the feel of any animation we are creating. As an animator, you're mainly going to be working with the graph editor, the normal timeline, and the dope sheet. We can switch between those from here. So this is the dope sheet and the timeline. But for this animation, we are mainly going to be using the graph editor and the normal timeline. We are not going to be using the dope sheet. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do is to come over here to the auto keying and let's activate it. What this does is that anytime we create or make a change to any given object in our scene, Blender automatically creates a keyframe for us on the given frame we are on. So for example, if I select this empty and rotate it like this, you can see that a keyframe has been automatically created on the first frame of our timeline. And if I move to another frame and make another change, you can see another keyframe has been automatically created. So if I move between these two keyframes, you can see the change that was made. Whereas if I wanted to do this manually, let me undo all of these. I would have to come over to this tab and let me turn off the auto key. And I'd have to, let's say I want to make a change in the Z rotation. I'd have to right click here and select insert single keyframe. And then let's come over here and rotate it like this. Right click and insert single keyframe. So instead of us always doing this manually every time, auto keying is just a good way to get our work done faster. So I'm going to undo all of these again, and let's reactivate the auto keying. So now let's just begin animating our controller. So when you watch the very first shot of the animation video, you would notice that the controller faces the back like this, and then it quickly spins this way to reveal the front of the controller. So I'm gonna have to rotate these to face the opposite side. So with the empty selected, I'm gonna press RZ and type in 180 to spin it this way. And you can see we have a keyframe automatically created on the first frame of our timeline. But I don't want to add a keyframe to any of these axes just yet. So let's come over to the timeline, press A to make sure that this is selected, press X and let's choose delete keyframes. And that has deleted every keyframe that was added to this axis. With the empty still selected, let's press Ctrl A and let's choose rotation. And you can see that the Z axis has changed to 0 degrees. Okay, so with that done, we can now start adding keyframes. I'm only going to be adding keyframe to the Z rotation and the X. So I'm going to right click on the X and choose insert single keyframe. And the same thing on the Z, insert single keyframe. And the reason why I did that manually was because for the auto keying to start working, we need at least a keyframe on a fixed position of any object in our scene. So if I'm to move the playhead to, let's say, frame 20 and make a change to this, you'll see that we have a keyframe automatically added for us. I'm going to undo this. The first shot of our animation has a total of about 126 frames. So I'm gonna come over to the end frame here and let's type in here 126, and that has shortened our playback range to 126 frames. And I'm gonna move the playhead to the last frame, which is 126, and come over to the Z rotation axis and let's drag on that to rotate this, and let's spin this to about 194 or 195. Anyone is okay. I'm gonna press spacebar now to play out the animation and see how it's looking. And you can see it's nothing compared to how our original animation looks. It moves too slow. It's very slow from the first frame all the way to the last frame, whereas ours happens just fast, very fast. So to fix that, this is where the graph editor comes in. So I'm gonna come over here and let's change this to graph editor, and let's zoom out on this. Press A to select everything and period to really see how this curve is looking. Let's come to the drop down here. And since we added keyframes to only the X rotation and the Z rotation, that is why we are seeing them here. Whereas if we had also added a keyframe to the Y, we would have seen the Y as well. But we are only working on these two, so only these are displayed. For now, I'm going to be working on the Z rotation. So let's select on this eye icon to hide the X rotation curve. And let's select only the Z. I'm gonna bring my mouse cursor here until it changes to this arrow pointing up and down. And let's left click and I'm gonna drag it up a bit to have more room for our graph editor. And when you look at the graph editor, you will see this line that looks like this. And it's what we call a Bezier interpolation curve. Whenever we create an animation between two keyframes, Blender will automatically create an interpolation curve that looks exactly like this. And we have different types of interpolation curves, but this is just the default one we get whenever we create an animation. And I'm going to press T to bring out this menu, and you can see all of the interpolations we have. So this is the default. We have linear, constant, and whichever one we select affects how our animation is going to look. And just so you know, every curve has a color based on its axis. So like this is blue, it represents the Z rotation axis. Let me hide this and bring this. You can see this is the X rotation axis and it's red. If we had a Y rotation as well, it would have been green. So let's move this back, hide it, and turn this back on. Okay, so before we actually start making this look like the way it needs to be, let me quickly explain what these things are. When you look at the first keyframe here, you see 2 points that puts it between, and these are what we call handles. We can control these, and this changes how our animation is going to behave. So take a look at the curve here. When I extend this handle like so to make this almost like a straight line, let me play it for you to see. You can see our animation is hardly moving because there is no movement. It's like, just imagine a car that doesn't have an engine, like a car that depends on, let's say, the wind or whatever. When it's on a straight or a flat surface like this, it's hardly going to move. But if, let me select this handle, if this becomes a slope, now let's play this. If it becomes a slope and we play, you can see it's going to start moving. And the steeper the slope, the faster the car is going to fall. So let me bring this even more. You can see it's moving even more faster than before. And if we are to change the direction of this slope in the opposite direction, you can see it's also going to follow the direction of the curve. So from here, you can see it's moving opposite. And when it comes to the top here, it begins to fall again in the other direction like so. And it's gonna move even more faster because we have a steeper slope here. You can see it's moving faster. And then because we have almost like a straight line here, let me extend this to make it even more straight. It's going to slow down. It slows down. So this is what the curves does for us. We control these handles to get it, or to control our animation to look the way we want it to look. And we can also control how we want to manipulate this angle. So if I select this keyframe and press V, you see we have different types of handle control here. So if I choose free, this means that we can only move this handle, and it's not going to affect this. If I, let's say, choose another one, vector, you can see how it's behaving. Let me choose align. So I'm going to move this back. I think this is the original. Okay, so let's just undo this. To get the original curve. Okay. Now I'm going to start manipulating these handles to make our animation looking exactly how they needs to. So I'm going to zoom out on this timeline. Let's zoom out till about negative 200. So you're going to see negative 200 here, 100, 0, and so on. And I'm going to select this handle and let's bring it down to align with the negative 200 like this. And I'm going to play this to see. And you can see it's getting much better. It's getting much better. We can still make it look a bit faster than how it's looking. So I'm going to come over to frame 40 and let's right click and choose insert keyframes to add another keyframe here. And I'm going to select this handle again. Let's bring it down to just between negative 100 and negative 150. So let's place it here and let me play again to see. Okay, so you notice when it spins, it begins to slow all the way to the end. And that's because, just like I explained, we have a very sharp slope here, very fast slope here. And as it goes, it begins to turn to almost a straight line. So that's why we are having this fast to slow movement. But I want this to look even a lot more slow from the initial fast rotation. I want this to become much slower from about here. So I'm going to select this handle here and let's move these like so. We can also move these. So let's play again. Okay. Let me see. Let's bring this down so that at frame 40, it's facing the camera exactly. We have this facing the camera exactly. So let's bring this down a bit. And I'm going to come over to this. Let's also bring this down too. Okay, let's play. Perfect, perfect. It's looking perfect now. So it turns fast and it begins to slow and slow and slow and slow like so. So after this shot, the next thing we have is the controller quickly tilting along the x-axis like so. So I'm going to, let's hide the Z rotation and unhide the X. I want to delete all the keyframes on the X now. So press A and X, delete keyframes. Let's come over to frame 60 because I think this is where that movement happens. So let's come to like frame 60 and come to the X rotation axis. Right click and let's choose insert single keyframe. Let's move to frame 70, and I'm gonna rotate these to about, let's say, 50. I think 50 is okay. Press A to select and period to zoom in like this. So you should have this Bezier interpolation like so. Let's come to frame 60 again. Select this handle. And because it's a very fast movement, if we are to play this now, it's going to be very, very slow. Okay, it's fast, all right, because it happens between just 10 frames. So it's going to look fast, but not like how it's supposed to. So let's move these up and straighten it like this. Now let's play this again. Okay. I think it's a bit too fast for me. So let me just bring this down slightly. Let's play again. Okay, and you can notice that all his movements goes with the music. So let me play again. So from the first, this turns and the music begins, and at this point there's another portion of the music that this rhymes with. So if you can notice that, let's play again. Pum, 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 pum. So when it does pum pum, you see that this spins quickly, or it rotates quickly on the x-axis. So let's play just one more time for you to see that. So let me press shift and left arrow to take this to the first frame and play again. Pum, 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 pum. So you notice that pum pum, it quickly rotates. You can actually adjust this if it's not in alignment with the music. So you can just select everything and GX and just move this to wherever you feel it needs to change and align with the song. I'm going to move the playhead to frame 65, and I want to change this from centimeters to meters. I think yours is also in centimeters. If it's the same, just come over to Scene Properties tab, and in length, change it from here to meters. Okay, so on frame 65, I want the camera to move on the Y axis to about minus 1.7 meters. And on the Z location, you can either drag on it or just type in here 0.33. So it's going to move up to about 0.33 meters. Let's play to see how it's looking. Perfect, perfect. The next thing you see as soon as the camera zooms in towards the controller is the PlayStation logo lighting up. To be honest, I don't really like how the emission of the original animation video looks. So I decided to make this look a lot more cooler than that. All right, so I want the change in color to happen between frame 84 and 88. So let's come to frame 84 and select the logo. Scroll down to the Material Properties tab, and in the position here, I'm going to click on these little white dots here to add a keyframe to it. Let's move the playhead to frame 88 and drag these to about 0.5, and a keyframe is automatically added. So I'm going to play this to see. Perfect. The next and the last thing I'm going to be doing for the first shot is to animate these shapes here, just as you see in the video. So I'm going to start with the X. Let's select it and come over to frame 30, because this is the frame it has to be up. In frame 30 here, in the Z location, I'm going to right click and insert a single keyframe. And in the rotation axis, just hover over any of these and press I to insert a keyframe. Let's change this to the timeline. Okay. And let's go back to the first frame and bring it down like so. And I'm gonna press R twice to go to free rotation and just rotate this slightly like so. Let's come over to frame 30, and in the Y rotation, let me go to camera view from here. I'm going to drag this to straighten up the X. Okay, let's select the graph editor, select these, and I'm gonna click on the X rotation, this eye here on the X rotation, and just drag down on all the other to hide them, and leaving only the Z location. Press A to select everything and period to zoom in like this. I'm gonna select this handle, and because this is also a very fast movement, I'm going to move this. Let's play. Okay. Okay, so when you see this shape here, from the first frame, as it goes up, it just comes to a standstill. It doesn't have any movement, or so it just pauses and it's not looking so interesting. So let's play to see. You can see it just stops. So let's add a bit of some rotation to the Y axis to make it looking much cooler. So let's select it again, and I'm gonna hide the Z location, and let's unhide the Y rotation. Press A and period to zoom in like this. Let's come over to frame 18 and insert a keyframe on it. And I'm gonna come to frame 42. Let's box select on this keyframe on frame 30, press GX, and let's move it to frame 42. And let's come over to frame 60, insert a keyframe on it. On frame 18, I'm going to select this keyframe, and watching this from the camera view, I'm going to press G, Y, and let's move this up so that it's straight like this. Okay. Let's come to frame 42, select this keyframe, press G, Y, and let's bring it down like so. Let's play this to see. Okay, so you can see how we had an interesting rotation on the Y axis. So it rotated towards the left and then it turns back towards the right. And that is caused by the up and down of this curve. You can see as it goes up, we have this shape trying to move towards the right. And as it comes down, we have it moving in the opposite direction. So that's what curves it's all about. It's just to change the movement regarding the timing, the speed, and everything about our animation. Okay, so without wasting too much time on this, I'm gonna move on to the next shape. So I'm gonna select this, and I want to make it looking straight. So let's spin it on the x-axis like this, and spin it on the Y, and we can bring it down slightly. Okay, let's press A over these and let's delete all these keyframes. I'm going to bring the playback head to frame 30, and in the Z location axis, let's right click and insert a single keyframe. Hovering over this, press I to insert keyframes to all of it. Let's bring this to frame 1, and I'm going to drag on the Z location to about here and press R twice, and let's rotate this like so. I'm going to hide all of these except the Z location, and let's press A and period to zoom in like so. Select this handle, and just like before, I'm going to grab it like so. Okay. Similarly to the X shape when we firstly animated it, the square also doesn't have any interesting rotation. It just comes to a standstill like this. So let's do the same thing for it. I'm going to hide the Z location, and this time I want to add rotation to the X rotation axis. So let's unhide that. Press A and period to zoom in like this. I'm going to come to frame 18. Let's insert a keyframe. Come to frame 42. Let's select this keyframe and move it over there. Come to frame 60 and insert keyframe. Let's come back to frame 18. I'm going to select this keyframe and press GY. Let's move this up to rotate it backwards. Let's come to frame 42. Select this keyframe and I'm going to bring it down to spin it on the opposite direction. And now let's play this to see. Perfect, perfect. Let's move to the next shape, and I'm going to spin this on the x-axis to make it straight and a bit on the y-axis. And we can even move it in slightly. Okay, let's press A over here and press X. Let's delete all the keyframes we added. So come to the Z location, insert a single keyframe, press I here, and let's come to frame 1. Bring this down here and just rotate it like this. And come over here. Let's hide all of this except the Z location. Let's move this like so and play this. Okay. Perhaps we can bring this slightly down. Let's hide the Z location channel and unhide the Y rotation. Press A and period to zoom in like this. Come to frame 18, just like before, insert keyframes. Frame 42. Let's move this there. Frame 60. Insert keyframes. On frame 18, I'm going to bring this down to about there. Let's come to frame 42. Select this keyframe and let's move this up like so. Let's play. I feel this is a bit rotated, so let's move this up slightly. Perfect, perfect. And finally, the last shape. Let's select it and also gonna spin it on the X to make it straight. Let's also move it slightly in like this. Okay. Let's delete all the keyframes. Come over here, insert single keyframe, press I, come to frame 1, and let's bring it down. Okay, and let's spin it like this. Let's hide all of these. Z location, and let's grab this up. Play. Okay. Let's hide the Z location and unhide the X rotation. On frame 18, insert keyframes, frame 42. Let's move this there. And frame 60, insert keyframes. I'm going to move this down. And let's move this up. Okay, so now I can say that's everything we have to do for the first shot. Let's move on to the next shot, which is this. To set up the scene for the second shot, I'm going to come over to the Layout tab and select Collection. Let's press F12 to rename, and I'm going to call this First Shot. Press A to select everything, press M, and select New Collection. Let's rename this to Second Shot. Press OK to confirm. Make sure everything is selected with Shift D. Let's duplicate, press M again, and let's select First Shot to move all of them to the first shot. And I can select this box here to hide everything, leaving us with just the second shot for us to work with. Okay, and I'm going to be deleting some things in this scene because we'll not be using everything. I'm going to start with the shapes. So let's delete these. And since it's going to be a dark scene, I'll be deleting some of these lights here. So let's delete these and delete this one as well, leaving us with just these. I'm going to move the playhead back to the first frame, and let's turn off the auto keying for now. Select this empty, and I'm going to bring this tab out. Over here, I'm going to spin this by 180 degrees. Let's apply scale, and I'm going to delete these keyframes. Let's come over to the render tab and choose the world properties tab. Let's bring the strength all the way down to 0. Select the light here, come over here, and I'm going to increase the size to about 10. And let's reduce the power down to something like 4 watts. I think that's okay. Let's go back to the viewport shading. Select this empty, and I want to start animating it from the last frame here, which is 126, and I want it to end at 217. So come to the end frame here and type in 217. You can actually type in 126 to begin the play range here, or just hold Control and Home on your keyboard to start the play range there. I'm going to go back to the animation tab. Let's change this from graph editor to timeline. With the empty selected, I'm going to press Ctrl A, and let's choose rotation to zero out everything here. And I'm going to re-enable the auto keying. In the Z rotation axis, let's right click and choose insert single keyframe. And I'm going to move to the last frame and type in here 26 to spin it this way. Let's go back to the graph editor. And since we only added a keyframe to the Z rotation, that is the only channel we have here. And as always, this is the look of our curve whenever we create an animation between two keyframes. So it's on the Bezier interpolation. And if I'm to play this animation out, you're going to notice something here. It's going to move out or start out very slow. And as we progress, it's going to move fast. And then getting to the end of the animation, it's going to slow down and then stop. And that's because, let me come over here to the first frame. You can see that we have almost like a flat line here. And the more horizontal or flatter our curve is, the less motion or movement we are going to have in our animation. But as our curve lifts up and becomes more vertical, we're going to have a much faster movement. So let me play this for you to see. So you notice it started very slow and then it becomes fast and it's going to slow down again. Started slow, fast, and it's slowed down. And I don't want this in our animation. I want everything to have a constant speed. So I want it to start fast and end fast. And to do that, that is when I'm going to change this to the linear interpolation. So you can see we have a straight line. There is no change in our curve. It's a straight line and that's a constant motion. So let's play this. So you notice it started fast and ended fast compared to the previous interpolation. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is to animate the camera to quickly move from the right side of the controller to the left side, just as seen in the video. So I'm going to bring my mouse cursor to the 3D viewport here and press 7 to go to top view. Let's select the camera and you can see we have some keyframes in it from the part we duplicated. So make sure everything is selected and let's delete them. I'm going to move the playhead to frame 180 and watching from the camera view here, I'm going to grab this camera and just watch how it's moving and I'm going to place it just so the buttons are visible like this. I think something like this is okay. Let's move this to frame 190 and grab this here. And now I'm gonna play this to see. Okay, I think we can offset these keyframes a bit by 2 frames back. So make sure everything is selected and let's move this to 188. And I'm going to grab these like so. Let's play. Perfect. Perfect. Next, I'm going to add some emission to the buttons. So let's come here, select these, and let's go back to the first frame, which is this. Come over to the materials tab, and in base color, I'm going to copy this value here because I'll be needing it to revert back to this material. And I'm going to change the hue value to 0.666. Let's change the saturation to 1 and the value, let's make it 0.855 and click here to add a keyframe. Let's come down to emission, select this, and let's just repeat the same thing here. And I'm going to select this. In the strength, let's make this 10 and add a keyframe. When you see the beginning of this shot, the lights on the buttons are on, and getting towards the end of it, they go back off. And I'm going to do the same thing here. So let's bring the playhead to 10 and come over to the base color. And I'm going to reset all the values here to the original material. So let's make this 0, 0, and this was 0.156. And you can see a keyframe has been added here. That's why it's white. Let's come down to the emission, and in color, I'm going to bring this all the way down to make it black, and click on this to add a keyframe, and let's leave the strength as it is. So let's play this to see. Okay, not bad. What I want to do actually, I want to hold this emission all the way from frame 126 to frame 200, and then from here it changes to black. So let's change this to the timeline. Select this keyframe which represents the emission material, and I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate, and let's bring it to frame 200. Let's play it again to see. Okay. And now I'm just going to repeat the same thing for this part. So make sure you are on the first frame, which is 126, and come to base color. Let's make this 0.666, make this 1, and make this 0.855. Click on this to add a keyframe. Come down to emission and repeat the same thing, 0.666, 0.855. And let's change this to 10. Okay. Come to frame 210. Let's revert all of these back. And this was 0.423. Come to emission, bring it down. Okay. Box select on all of these, and let's duplicate it to 200, frame 200. Let's play. Perfect. So since this particular shot was mainly to emphasize the emission of buttons, I don't want the logo to also have emission. You can actually keep it if you want, if you like it like so. But for me, I'm going to turn it back off. So I'm going to bring the playhead to the first frame here. So these are the keyframes for the logo emission. So bring the playhead to 84 and press X. Let's delete keyframes. Just a quick reminder, before you delete the keyframes from it, just come over to the materials properties tab and make sure to click on this area here to make it a new material, because this same material is assigned to the first shots we made, and if we delete the keyframes, it's going to delete the animation we created for the first shot. So just click here to duplicate and make this a new material for this second shot. So now we have only the buttons having emission. Another thing I would like to show is when you watch the beginning of the animation for this shot, you can see that the lights on the button turns on from the first frame, and getting to the last frame, it turns back off. But ours just stays on from the first frame and it later turns off at the ending. So to copy the same thing in the video, I'm just simply going to select these and let's click on the first frame here and let's move it to 135. Click on the last frame here. Let's duplicate and bring it to the very first frame. And I'm going to select this other part and repeat the same thing. Let's bring this here and move this, copy it actually to the first frame. So let me play this to see. So it turns on and it goes off. Okay. One last thing I want to do in the scene before we move on to the next shot. You can see that the background from the camera view here is slightly off towards the end, and from the first frame it's even more off. So let's fix that. Before I do anything to the background, I'm going to turn off the auto keying because Blender is going to start adding keyframes everywhere for us. So press S and X. Let's scale this along the X axis to about here. Let's go into edit mode and press 2 to go into edge selection. And with this edge selected, I'm going to press G and Y and let's move it forward to cover this part of the camera. Let's go to vertex selection and select this vertex here. Let's press F to create a face like this. And I'm going to box select on all these vertices. Press G and Z and let's grab them up like so. Let's go to the last frame and see. Okay, everything is perfect now. Maybe we can just spin this a bit like so. And I'm gonna bring it down a bit. For every other shot of this animation, I'm going to use cycles to render them, except for this particular one, which I'll be using Eevee, because for me, Eevee just turned out to look a lot much better than cycles. And I'm going to come over to the render tab to show you the settings I used for Eevee. So you can see I've got ambient occlusion checked, bloom is checked, and screen space reflections. So with all these, you're good to go. And let's come over to the render tab. If you feel this is looking too dark, you can just select the light and maybe pump it up a bit to about 6. And now let's move to the third shot. So let's hide everything in the second shot and let's unhide the first shot again. And I'm just going to press A to make sure everything is selected. Press M and select new collection. Let's call this third shot. Press OK to confirm. With Shift D, let's duplicate this. Press M and let's move them back to the first shot. We can now hide this again. And now we have all these to work with. And just like before, I'm going to delete these again because we wouldn't need them. And since this is not going to be a dark scene, I'm going to leave the lights as they are. To quickly set up everything for the third shot, I'm going to select this empty. With Alt R, let's reset the rotation and press A over here to make sure that all the keyframes are selected. X, let's delete them. And I'm going to spin this on the Z by 90 degrees and on the Y by 90 degrees. Press Ctrl A and let's apply rotation to zero out everything here. And I'm going to be deleting some of the lights from the scene because we wouldn't be needing all of them. So let's select this one right here, delete that, and this one also. Select the camera and make sure these two keyframes are selected. Let's delete them. And I'm gonna grab this back here. press Ctrl and 0 to go into camera view from here, and let's get back out. So for this third shot, we are going to be needing a video reference. So let's add in an empty and select image. I'm going to press G and X. Let's grab this over here. Come down to the data properties tab, select open, and I'm going to load my video reference in. Let's spin this on the Z axis by minus 90 degrees and on the Y axis also by minus 90 degrees. And I'm going to press Ctrl and 3 on my numpad to come to this view, which is the left orthographic view. And let's scale the empty by 2, and let's grab it up here like so. And now this animation we're about to create has a total of 100 frames, and I would like to start from the very first frame. So let's come over here, and I'm going to type in 1, and let's make this 100, and let's play it. Okay, I'm going to move the playhead back to the very first frame, and now what I want to do is to copy the position of the bike on the reference image. And as you can see, it's at the far right corner of the image plane. So I'm going to select this empty, make sure that auto keying is turned on, and let's move this along the Y axis to about here. And I'm going to tilt it on the X axis like this. Let's come over to the 10th frame and grab this along the Y over here, and I'm gonna spin it a bit. Let's come to frame 20 and grab it here like so, and let's spin it a bit like so. Come to frame 30 and let's move this here like so and spin it. Frame 40, and I'm going to tilt it slightly like this and maybe move it a bit this way. Frame 50, let's tilt this even more like this. For frame 90, I'm only going to spin it slightly like this, and let's go to the last frame and let's move this here and rotate it. And I'm gonna play this to see. It's perfect, but we still need to add a bit of polishing to it. So when you watch the movement of the bike, you will notice that it has some shake in it. It's not driving smoothly. So we are going to be copying the same thing. I'm not going to be adding every single detail in the movement, but we just want to get this looking a bit close to what we have. So let's bring back the graph editor and click on this. I'm going to hide every channel except the X rotation axis. I'm only going to be adding the check towards the end of the video. So let's come over to about frame 65 and right click, insert a keyframe. Let's move to 67. Let's insert another keyframe. And I'm going to select that keyframe on frame 67. And with GY, let's grab it up here. Let's move to frame 69. Insert a keyframe. Let's move it down slightly and move to frame 72. Insert a keyframe. Let's also bring it down like this. Move to frame 74. Insert keyframe. I'm gonna grab this up to about here. Let's move to frame 82. Insert keyframe. And let's bring this up to about here. Move to frame 84. Insert keyframe. Let's bring this down. We can also bring this a bit down. So let's play this to see. Okay. I'm just going to select on all the keyframes here from frame 69 to 84 and move them to the right by one frame. And with the playhead on frame 96, I'm going to move this empty a bit like so. Let's hide the X rotation axis and unhide the Z location because I want to add a bit of a shake to the up and down movement of the controller. And I want to do that at frame 30. So bring the playhead to frame 30. And in the viewport here, I'm just going to grab this slightly up. Press period to zoom in on the graph editor like this. Let's move to frame 32 and insert keyframe. Select this and let's bring it down. Move to 34. Insert keyframe. And let's grab it up here. Move to frame 36. Insert keyframe. And bring it down. Move to frame 38. Add a keyframe. And I'm gonna grab it up. Okay, so you notice we have a subtle up and down movement here. That's okay. And if you want to control how intense the vibration is, you can just box select on these lower keyframes and let's bring them down slightly. Okay, I'm just gonna leave it like this. So in the animation video, I also added some rotations to the R2 button and the joystick. So I'm just going to copy the same thing here. Let's select these Press / to go into local view and into edit mode. I'm going to select these two vertices with Shift and S. Let's choose cursor to select it. Go back into object mode. Let's right click and come to set origin. Let's choose origin to 3D cursor. Let's go back into normal view. I'm going to bring the playhead to frame 62. And in the X rotation, let's insert a single keyframe here. Let's come to frame 77. And I'm just going to slightly rotate it like this. Okay. Come to frame 80 and I'm simply going to copy the keyframe on 62 to frame 80. So let's bring that here and I'm going to play this. Okay. Let me play it again. Not bad. And maybe we can repeat the same rotation at, let's say, frame 91. I'm going to copy all of these. Let's bring it here. And maybe we can move it a bit up. So it doesn't have to be exactly the same. And let's come to 97. Copy this again. And let's bring it there. Okay. Now let's move to the analog. So I'm going to select this one. And let's go into local view and into edit mode. Let's select all these vertices here. Bring cursor to selected and set origin to 3D cursor. Let's change this to timeline. And I'm going to be rotating the analog based on the rotation of the controller. And I want to start at frame 14. So at frame 14, we can see it's slightly tilted towards the right. So I'm going to press R and X. Let's rotate it like this. Come to frame 40 and it's a bit straighter here. So let's press RX and move it like this. Come to frame 56 and let's slightly rotate it like this. Come to frame 80 and at this frame it's a lot more tilted towards the left. So I'm going to tilt it like that. And let's come to frame 95 and rotate it back. Okay, so I'm gonna play this to see. Okay, perfect. So that's everything we're going to be doing for this shot. The only thing I want to do next is to just frame this properly in the camera view, because when you watch the animation video, the camera view is divided into two. This part shows the controller and the video is on this other side. So I'm going to go into camera view here. Let's turn off auto keying, select this controller and going to position it like this. So I'm just imagining that this part is going to be for the video. Let me play to see. Okay, not bad. We can select these and let's delete it and select the background. Let's scale it like this. Now let's move to the fourth shot. So I'm going to press A to select everything. Press M, choose new collection, and let's name this as fourth shot. And with everything selected, I'm going to press Shift and D to duplicate, press M, and let's select third shot to move everything there. And we can select this to hide. Let's select this empty, and with Alt and R, I'm going to reset the rotation. Let's press A to select all the keyframes and delete them. Let's select these, and let me see, on frame 40, it's straight. So let's delete all of them. Select these also. Press A and delete. Okay. Next, I want to load in the TV that shows the FIFA game. So let's come to File, Append, and find yours wherever you saved it to. So click on it and come to Object, and I'm going to select TV. And you can see the screen is blank because we haven't loaded in the file. So I'm going to click on it. Let's scroll down to the Materials tab, and you'll see here I have pre-made the material, which is called game clip. Let's just scroll down, and in base color, let's click on this little yellow dot and choose image texture. Let's select open, and I'm going to find mine where I saved it. So it's called FIFA game. I have already calculated the length and the timing of this animation. So I know it's supposed to start at frame 390. So let's type in here 390. And I want it to end at 460. Okay. Let's bring the playhead here. And if I press play, you can see our video file is not moving. And that's because we have to add a little settings to it. So still in the materials tab, let's come to frames, and I'm going to type in here 100, and the start frame will be 390. And still, if I play this, it's not going to play. So let's simply click on auto refresh and play it again. Okay, everything is working perfectly now. I'm going to select the camera, and let's press Ctrl and 0 to enter into its view. And let's select the controller. I'm going to bring the playback head to the first frame here, and I'm just going to frame this like so. No need to stress too much about this. Just make sure that the scoreboard and the name here is showing. Select the empty, and let's move the playback head to frame 414. And in the X rotation, I'm going to insert a single keyframe. Click on the auto keying to activate. And I'm going to watch everything from the camera view here. Let's move to frame 416. And I'm going to spin these along the X like so. And let's go to frame 418. And I'm simply going to copy this over here. So let's play it again. Okay. I also want to animate the box button to show when it's pressed down, though it's something that happens very fast and it's hardly noticeable, but I think it's going to be cool to add such a little detail. Just before we animate this, if I am to grab this button away, you can see that it's separated from the box icon here. And if I animate this down, you will see that they don't follow. So what I'm going to do, let's select this and go into edit mode. and hovering over these, I'm going to press L to select just these. Press P and let's cut them out by selection. Let's select them again and select the button and join them with Ctrl J. So now if I grab, they move together. So let's come over to frame 413, and in the Z location, I'm going to insert a single keyframe here. Let's move to the next frame and press GZ. Let's bring this down like so. And let's move to frame 417. And I'm going to select this first keyframe. Let's duplicate and bring it over there. Let's play and see. Okay, so you saw it happened very fast, but it's noticeable if you really look at it. Okay, I'm going to select this empty, and I'm just seeing that this is a bit delayed because since this scene is to show the quick response of the game to the button when pressed, I think we can offset this to about 3 frames forward, so to about frame 17. So I'm going to press G and let's bring the first frame there and let's play. Okay, so you see as the controller rotates, Ronaldo quickly takes a shot. So let's check it again. All right, and I think we can also offset this as well. So I'm gonna select it and let's also move it 3 frames forward. So from here, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3. Let's bring this to frame 416. Perfect. And since he's being controlled to move towards the left side of the screen, I'm also going to animate the analog to tilt towards that direction because that is what we use to control the movement if it's set to do that. So I'm going to come over to the first frame here. I'm going to tilt this on the X towards this direction. Let's bring the playback head to frame 414. And I'm going to duplicate this over there. Let's move to frame 415 and let's tilt this back. So from frame 390 all the way to frame 414, the joystick is going to remain in this position. And on frame 415, it's going to return back to its original position just before the shot is taken, because we use the thumb to control this and also to press on this button. So we'll have to release this to click on that. I'm going to play this to see how it's looking. Okay. Next, I want to animate the camera movement. So I'm going to select the camera. Let's go into camera view. Come over to frame 415. And I'm going to press I over all of these to add keyframes to them. And let's come over to the first frame over here. And I'm going to place this in the camera view like this. Let's play and see. Okay, I'm gonna add in an empty. So with Shift A, let's come down to empty and choose plane axis and go to the top view. I'm going to bring it to the joystick like this, and let's scale it down and grab it up here. Okay, and we have a keyframe inserted here. I don't want that, so let's delete it. I'm going to select the camera, come over to the data properties, check depth of field, and click on this drop down arrow. I'm going to select the eyedropper and let's place it on our empty. Let's move the playback head to the first frame here and come over to the f-stop settings. I'm going to click on this to add a keyframe here, and let's move to frame 418 and click this again, and let's move to frame 423, and I'm going to drag this till the screen is sharp, and you can see we have a keyframe automatically there for us. So you can see from the first frame here, the screen is blur, and just after the buttons goes down and the shot is about to be taken, it becomes sharp. So let's play this to see. Perfect. And you can see that some part of the background is off the camera. So I'm going to select it. Let's turn off auto keying first and press GY. Let's bring this like so. Go into edit mode, and I'm going to select this vertex here. Let's press F to create a face. Go to edge selection mode, select these two edges, and I'm going to move them along the Y to cover these spaces here. Let's go to face select, and I'm just gonna grab this down. Okay, and I'm going to delete these lights because I don't think we'll be really needing them for this scene. I'm going to select the TV and the empty, press M, and let's move them to the fourth collection. Let's click on this to hide everything, and I'm going to hide the first shot collection. With everything selected, let's press M, new collection, and let's call this fifth shot. Okay, let's duplicate, move these to first, and let's hide this again. So I'm going to be using this to create our last and final shot, and let's delete these just like before. I'm going to move the playback head to the very first frame for now, just to reset all of these to their original position. And I'm going to select this empty and press A. Let's delete all the keyframes. And I'm going to spin this on the Z by 180 and Control A, apply rotation, select the camera, A to select everything. Let's also delete keyframes. And to activate this camera, I'm going to press Control and 0 on the numpad. So for this last shot, we have the controller spinning 4 times as it changes color. And this is the part where we're really going to play with the curves, so you need to really pay attention to whatever I'm doing. So I'm going to get this facing the opposite direction again. So let's press RZ and type in 180 to spin it back, and with Control A, I'm going to apply rotation. Let's activate the auto key. Come to the Z axis and let's insert a single keyframe. And I'm going to bring this to frame 130. Press Control and End. to end the play range here. And since this is going to spin 4 times, I'm going to come over to the Z axis and I'm going to rotate it. So this is going to be 1. When it faces the camera, this is going to be our first rotation. And I'm still going to drag on that. This will be 2. And I'm going to drag on it again. 3. And the last one, 4. Let's bring that one to about here. From the video, you can see that we have a speed ramp effect with the rotation of the controller. So when it spins the first time to reveal the front, you can see that it's very fast and it slows down a bit and spins fast again for the second time, and so on and so forth till we get to the fourth rotation. So we're going to get that done with the help of curves. So I'm going to come over to the graph editor. Let's press A and period to zoom in, and this is what we have. So what I'm going to do now, let's come over to frame 6, and I'm going to select this keyframe only and duplicate it to frame 6 like this. Let's select this handle and bring it over here. Let's select this keyframe also, and we're going to come over to frame 30. Let's duplicate and bring it there. When I move the playback head to the first frame and play this, you can see that we have a very quick rotation, and that's because of how this curve looks here. You can see that it's a very steepy slope. From here, it's very steepy, which means that our animation is going to happen very fast. And getting to this other frame, it begins to flatten out and almost becoming a straight line, and that is going to make it slow down a bit. And as we come over here, we also have to have the same slope we have here to repeat the same interpolation. I'm gonna come over to frame 60 and let's duplicate this keyframe over there. Let's come to frame 42 and I'm gonna insert a keyframe there. Select that keyframe and I'm gonna bring it down till the controller is facing the camera like this. And let's select this and also bring it down. So you can see we are making the curve of our animation look almost like a staircase, because a staircase has a vertical and a horizontal surface. And from here, the first frame here, you see we have this becoming almost a vertical line as it slants, and this is going to make our animation spin very fast. And coming over here, it begins to become a lot more horizontal, which slows down our spinning. And as we come here, it becomes a lot more vertical again, which makes our rotation fast and slows down. So we're going to continue doing this till the last rotation. I'm going to bring this to frame 90 and I'm going to duplicate this over there. Let's come to frame 72 and insert a keyframe, and selecting that keyframe, I'm going to bring it down till the controller is facing the camera like this. Let's box select on this and bring it down. Let's bring this to frame 120 and I'm going to duplicate this over there. Come to frame 100 and insert keyframe. Select that and let's bring this down till it faces the camera like this. I'm gonna select this keyframe and bring it down like this. Let's select this handle and I'm gonna grab it up like so. So as you would know, I'm trying to make this line here look almost horizontal. it doesn't have to be too horizontal, otherwise the motion is just going to stop. So we need this to keep on spinning very slightly as we get to the last frame. I'm gonna select these and align it like this. Grab these up. So I'm gonna play this to see. Okay. And I think we can make this a bit more straighter because it's almost like an S. So I'm going to select this handle and just bring this down like so. Okay. The last thing I'm going to make in this shot is to animate the change in colors of the controller as it spins. So I'm going to click on the controller. Let's scroll down to the materials properties tab, and over here you will find this material called body. And just like the logo, this material is also shared by all the other controllers we have in the hidden shot. So any change we try to make to it is going to affect them as well, and we don't want that. So I'm going to click on this part here to duplicate it and make it a new material only assigned to this particular controller. And you can see the new material is called body.001. So I'm going to change this to the timeline, and let's come over to the very first frame. So from the very first frame all the way to about here, I think 35, I want this to have one color, and I'm going to make this a pink color. You can feel free to make this whatever color you want. So let me go back to the first frame and let's scroll down here. Click on this to add a keyframe, and I'm going to click into this part here. In the hue, I'm going to change this to 0.922, and the saturation, I'm going to make this 0.996, and I'm going to leave the value and the alpha as they are. Let's come over to frame 35, and let's click here to add a keyframe. So from the very first frame up until 35, we are going to have this pink color. Now let's move to the next frame, which is 36. So on this frame, when the controller is at this position and almost facing the camera, I want it to change from this color to a light blue color. So I'm going to come over here and let's click on it. Let's change the hue value to 0.600, and we're going to have something like this. So I want this color to hold from frame 36 all the way to about 64. And let's click here to add a keyframe. I'm going to move to the next frame, and from here I want it to change to a yellow color. So like before, let's click here and I'm going to change this to 0.114, and let's make this 1. Okay, so this is going to be yellow all the way to frame, I think 93. Okay, 93. And let's click here to add a keyframe. Let's move to the next frame. And from here, I want the controller to go back to its original white color. So let's come over here, and in the hue, I'm going to change this to 0 and saturation 0. And you can see a keyframe is added. So I'm going to take this to the very first frame and let's play to see. Nice. So that is all we have to do for this shot. Now to render, I'm going to render every shot in cycles except for the dark or low light scene which we made. If cycles is going to take you a long time, I believe Eevee is not going to do a bad job for you. You can also use that as well. And don't forget to change the world strength from 0 to 1 whenever you are going to render any scene apart from the dark scene. So just change this from 0 to 1. And if you have no idea how to actually render this, let me start from the very first shot. So I'm going to hide this and let's unhide the first shot. And whenever you want to render, make sure to be in that scene's camera. So select it and press Ctrl and 0 to enter into the camera view. So in this shot, I noticed that this light was a bit too reflecting on these buttons. So we can hide that in the render view by coming over here. It's called area.011. So we can click on this camera icon to hide it in our render view and also in our viewport. I'm going to come to the render tab here and let's change this from Eevee to cycles. And I'm going to render these at 500 samples. And let's come to the output properties and let's click on this folder icon. I'm going to click here and let's call this first shot. Click on accept and I'm going to click on it. Let's accept again. So for this first shot, every render we are going to make is going to enter this folder called first shot. And I would like to render this in PNG. And that's all for the output we have to do. So don't forget to come over to the world properties tab and make sure that the strength is set to 1. After you are done rendering everything in this, we can hide it here and let's unhide the second shot. And because this is going to be the dark shot, I'm going to make this 0 and this is going to be rendered in Eevee. Don't forget to click on the camera and press Ctrl and 0 on your numpad to enter into the camera view. For the output settings, let's come down, click on this and come to the original folder which the first shot is in. And I'm going to click on the add new folder again and call this second shot. Accept and click on it and accept again. So every render we are going to create for this second shot is going to enter into the second shot folder. We'll just repeat this all the way to the last shot. So every other shot, like I said, is going to be rendered in cycles except for this particular one, which is to be rendered in Eevee. And don't forget that each of the shots have different playback range where the animation begins. Like this second shot here, I think it starts from frame 126 and it ends at frame 217. So we can just come here and press Ctrl Home and come here, press Ctrl End and start rendering your animation from here. If you are kind of lost, just check back on the videos to see which frames we began our animations. Alright guys, that's everything for this tutorial. In the next video, which will be a second part to this one, we are going to edit and compile all the renders from all the 5 collections into a single video file. And we are going to do everything in DaVinci Resolve. So thanks for watching, thanks for following along. Kindly remember to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't to be updated on any new uploads.
PlayStation